Well, hey everyone, we continue tonight talking about hope. What is hope all about? Well, hope looks forward for good to happen. What does hope look forward to? I'll tell you what I think hope looks forward to tonight. A Kansas City Chiefs victory. Yes, and for everybody out there on any one of our campuses who you're a Patriots fan, I want you to know I prayed about this earlier, and there's no hope for you. No hope. I'm totally kidding. I'm just from Missouri and grew up cheering for the Chiefs. So what I spoke about last week in regards to hope is that I personally just tend to underestimate my need for hope. I think a lot of us do. I think a lot of us see hope as kind of a good thing, just not one of our greatest needs. And the Apostle Paul, one of the giants of Christianity, an amazing leader, saw hope as one of our top 3 greatest needs. Why is hope one of our greatest needs? Because sometimes life is dark. I remember growing up real young. From time to time, my mom and dad would drop me off with Grandma and Grandpa. And they would turn around, get in the car with my sister Lacey, and drive 8 hours to St. Jude's Children's Hospital because my sister was battling brain cancer. Sometimes life is dark. I remember later in life, I was a sophomore in high school. My dad calls me into his office. My dad was my high school principal. I sit down, and my dad says, "Son, I just submitted my letter of resignation, and we're not going to be at this school next year." And I remember thinking to myself, like, where are we going? What about all my friends? What about all these years' memories? I'm going to have to start over. My dad would lovingly remind me in that season of life, "Son, sometimes life isn't easy." Dad was right. Sometimes life is dark. I remember 2 years ago, my first ride in an ambulance on a stretcher. I had the diagnosis of multiple pulmonary embolisms. That's blood clots in each of my lungs. Every breath hurt. Sometimes life is dark. I remember not even a year ago today, my wife was on the phone with her doctor. She was pregnant with our son at the time. And she just had an ultrasound, and the doctor is telling my wife on the phone that as they've been reviewing the images of my son's brain, they see a vital portion of the brain missing. Sometimes life is dark. There's no question, students. All of us, every single one of us, will face the dark. We'll face a challenge. We'll face some adversity in life. We'll face some pain and some struggle. Some to a really great degree. Some will be very small. But we'll all face the dark. And for so many of us, hope is lost in the dark. Why do we lose hope in the dark? Well, it's because we can't really see a clear path in order to move forward. As we're looking around, all we see is bad. All we feel is hurt. We stop expecting good to happen, and that's when despair sets in. That's when the darkness steals our joy. It takes our confidence. It even diminishes our faith. We can't let that happen. We can't. Last week I said that the flaw with hope is that in this world, there's nothing that we can hope for that's on lock. There's no promise that even though that you expect good to happen, that it will actually work out the way that you want it to. Sometimes bad will happen. And that's why, students, we've got to find a better hope. We've got to find a hope that we can look forward to and a good that we can expect that will happen, that is a lock, that is a guarantee. The Apostle Peter talked about this kind of hope. He called it living hope. And here's what he wrote about it. 1 Peter chapter 1, he says, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead." That's an awesome verse. Living hope is the hope that Jesus provides. It's the hope that God is for us, that God is with us, and that God will one day make everything new. Tonight, the big idea goes like this. Living hope won't always remove the dark. It won't always take away that difficult season that you're in the midst of, but it will guide you through it. I think people often ask, why doesn't God just take away all the dark from the world? Why doesn't he take away the arguments from my household? Why doesn't he get rid of cancer? Why doesn't he stop all the car accidents? Put an end to the overdoses? Can't he do something about the annual losing seasons of the Phoenix Suns? Come on. I mean, Devin Booker needs some help, right? Let me assure you, students, one day, Jesus will put an end to every darkness in this world. One day, there will be no more hurt. There will be no more tears. There will be no more sadness or pain because Jesus will make everything new. That's the hope of heaven, you guys. And if you're someone who's curious about heaven, you got to come back next week because that's what we're talking about next week. And it's so important. Every one of you need to be here. And that's a perfect time for you to bring someone with you. But while we're here, you guys, when we face the dark, Living Hope wants us to have a different perspective. Jesus had a half-brother. His name was James. James and Jesus shared the same mom, Mary. And James talked about this different perspective that we are to have when we face these seasons of darkness. And it's so interesting to me that James never even believed that Jesus was God until after Jesus rose from the dead. When he saw Jesus alive, everything changed for James. He sold out for Jesus. He started the original church in the city of Jerusalem, the city where Jesus was executed. And James faced some unbelievable persecution. He was eventually martyred because he took a stand for Jesus. But I want you to read with me this perspective that James had about living hope. He said, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." I love that phrase that he says, "Consider it pure joy." I love it, and I think it's kind of crazy at the same time. I mean, pure joy when life is dark? How? How can we have joy when life is dark? I think James understood something so clearly, and I put it in my own words. I just wrote that if you'll walk with Jesus through the dark, he'll guide you to a stronger faith. I think the key of this phrase is if you'll walk with Jesus through the dark. You know what so many of us do when we face the dark? We walk alone. And Jesus never intended that any of us do that. He's with you. He's provided people right now on the campus that you're on. He's provided people around you to be together with you in this season. His plan included hope. It was the hope of the church that we would never be alone. If you walk with Jesus through the dark, he'll guide you to a stronger faith. And you know what? Athletes understand some of the essence of this phrase because you guys know that sometimes you have to suffer a loss. Sometimes there has to be a setback in order for you to grow stronger. The same is true in our faith. Sometimes we've got to get knocked down so that Jesus can raise us back up. Right now, I want to show you the story of one of our CCV students. Her name is Paige. And recently, Paige has had to begin walking in a season of darkness. And I want you to see for yourself her perspective as she's been walking through it.
Volleyball is how I can cope with things sometimes. On the court, I can just focus on the volleyball because that's all I can focus on. If you're not focused, then you just won't perform. And it's like my therapy. helps me get through. My name is Paige Wilson and I go to Highland High School. About 2 months ago, I was in a minor car accident on my way to school. Later that day, I had volleyball training and felt pretty good. Nothing was out of the ordinary. And then I began to feel lightheaded and dizzy and nauseous, and everybody gets that when you're running and pushing yourself, but I've never felt like to that extent before. But I went to sit down because I just couldn't take it, and I passed out for about 15 minutes. I woke up and the ambulance and paramedics were taking me to the emergency room. The doctors came in and they said that I was fine. There wasn't like signs of anything. They were gonna let me go, but my parents and my grandparents wanted an explanation, so they said maybe run a few tests. And within the next 45 minutes, the doctors will come in and they said that I was gonna be put in a neck brace and had to go through tests and scans. So I'm still not able to play volleyball. Obviously, being in the ICU for almost 5 days, overnight trips and back and forth, it's just hard. Like, why does this happen to you? I hope I'm a good person. I like to think that I'm good. I help others. I read the Bible and go to church, but sometimes it just happens and I don't know why. Since the accident, I feel like I've been a lot harder on myself, like trying to be perfect outside of volleyball. This experience has pushed me closer to the Lord, and obviously in the midst of it, I was like, why me? Why does this happen? But it's brought me closer to the things that I maybe let volleyball take importance over. And it's made me realize that there are other things in life than the sport that I love, which I do love, but right now I think that's what God's trying to tell me, is that He is number one focus and other things need to slow down for a little bit until it gets on track. I know it's tough when things happen and you can't control it, you can't change it. I feel like there's nothing you can do, but there's always how you react to it. And That's what people look at when they look at you. They're gonna remember your story, but they're gonna remember how you reacted and how you came out from it. It's okay to be sad, to be hurt, and have those days where you just can't deal. I've had those, everybody's had those. But if you let it consume you, then you will never live, you'll never experience what God has put you on this earth to do.
Kind of a just crazy God thing, how this story has come about. Didn't even know until about a week ago, Paiges Story. And I'm so grateful to hear from Paige in that story that she's choosing to walk with Jesus in the dark. And you guys need to know, she's not out of it. She's not through it yet. But what gets you through these seasons? What can you trust? This is where hope is so important, you guys. Last week I said this: hope is like the air inside this volleyball. Fills you with life. And what does it do? It enables you. It gives you the ability that when you come in contact with adversity, you bounce back. Hope is what's going to guide and give life to Paige through this season of darkness. And I love her words that even through the dark, God is guiding her to a stronger faith. This has been true in my life. Every time I've gone through a season of dark, God has guided me to a stronger faith. Was it easy? No. Do I wish it would happen again? Never. But students, the next time I face the dark, when you face the dark, let's remember to have that different perspective that James had. If we'll walk with Jesus in the dark, he'll guide us to a stronger faith. Living hope, it's not always going to remove the dark, but it will guide you through it. Why? Why can we trust? Why can you trust, if you're in a season that's really hard right now, why can you trust that living hope will guide you through it? Well, it's because living hope knows what it's like to be in the dark. So many of us wrongly assume that God can't relate with our struggles. But then there was Jesus, who was born to a teenage mom. His dad wasn't his biological father. He grew up a poor carpenter from a no-name village. His message to people was difficult for them to get on board with. People often insulted Jesus, told lies behind his back. His cousin John was beheaded. One of Jesus' closest followers sold him out for 30 pieces of silver. The night Jesus was arrested, his 12 best friends turned their back on him and ran away. One of them denied ever knowing him. That was the guy who would later write about living hope. The Romans beat him beyond recognition, publicly humiliated him, and nailed him to a cross. Students, living hope knows what it's like to be in the dark. But students, don't miss this. Every darkness that Jesus faced, there was always a purpose. There was always a purpose. And just like James wants us to have a different perspective, Jesus would have us know there's a bigger purpose. The Apostle Paul talked about this bigger purpose in Romans chapter 8. And he said, and we know that God causes everything, every pain, every breakup, every hurt, every loss, every season of dark, everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. Students, you can trust God has a purpose behind every darkness that you're facing, and he'll use it for your good. How's that exactly going to go down? I don't know. I just know for me personally, every time this has been true. For all the Jesus followers that I know and respect, I know that this is true for them. Students, don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. Fix your eyes on Jesus. Different perspective. Bigger purpose. Though living hope will not always remove the dark, He will guide you through it.